The King's cancer diagnosis leaves the royal family in a difficult position, but most badly affected, arguably, is Prince William, who now has to choose between his immediate family and supporting the family firm. In the absence of the King, there's clearly going to be a need for the other members of the royal family, senior royals, senior working royals as they're now defined, to step up to the plate and make sure that that visibility continues. So Queen Camilla can carry out a role to a certain extent, but she doesn't have the constitutional heft that Prince William has as heir to the throne. He is son and heir. As he pledged to his father at the coronation, he is the King's liege man of life and limb, and therefore his role is quite different to Camilla's. For instance, Queen Camilla cannot carry out an investiture because she's not a blood-born member of the royal family. It's going to be for William, for instance, I think, to stand in should the King be too unwell, for instance, to have his weekly audience with Rishi Sunak. Constitutionally, it would not be appropriate for Queen Camilla to fulfil that function. It would be for the heir to the throne to do it. So at the moment we've got this situation where Buckingham Palace is insisting that the King is going to carry on with his red boxes, carry on doing sort of closed doors engagements, and they're stressing that they're doing this and they're not putting him in a public facing role because of probably fear of infection. They don't want him to be meeting members of the public while he's undergoing cancer treatment because obviously his immunity is going to be compromised. That's fine for now, but anyone that's suffered with cancer or knows anyone that has suffered with cancer knows that these treatments can be extremely grueling, that they can leave you very tired, often physically unwell. I appreciate the palace hasn't specified the kind of treatment that he's undergoing, but we know that it needs to be radiotherapy, chemotherapy or immunotherapy, probably, in the absence of an actual operation. And so is it realistic for Buckingham Palace to be suggesting that he's going to continue doing some of these roles, some of these functions? And I think surely it must depend on how he reacts to the treatment as time goes on. So while it may be appropriate now for Prince William to be saying, I'm going to prioritise immediate family over the family firm, what's that going to look like in weeks to come? This idea that Prince William is just going to carry on with his own projects earthshot and only do a little bit to support the King, I'm not sure whether from a PR perspective or indeed a practical one that's quite going to cut the mustard. There is of course an expectation on the Prince of Wales to step up and be the first to step up in the King's absence. And I think from a visual point of view, as far as the public's concerned, they would be reassured to see him doing that.
Have you read the flowers? You've seen the message now?
Why has William decided to do this quite modern sort of put my wife first approach? Why has he decided to adopt that? Well, actually, this is the intriguing aspect of this. It's with his father's encouragement. So my understanding is, because I've been told by several people, that when they announced that William would be supporting Kate in the aftermath of her operation, that was very much done with the King's blessing. The King's thoughts on all this, ironically, are almost in line with Prince Harry's when Prince Harry talked about suffering from genetic pain and the kind of generational heartache of being brought up as a royal and being brought up on the sort of nursery floor and having this kind of hands-off parental approach. Harry said very clearly that Prince Charles suffered from that, suffered from this slightly hands-off parenting by the Queen and Prince Philip. And he sort of questioned, why is my father passing that on to me? And we've heard from Prince Harry, haven't we, talking about his father's sort of inability to hug him after Princess Diana died, and that there's a bit of a disconnect there. But conversely, my understanding is that the King actually does recognise that. With his own marriage to Camilla, we've seen, and it was quite unprecedented, Camilla spending hours by his bedside when he underwent the procedure on his enlarged prostate at the London clinic. Previously, in years gone by, if the Duke of Edinburgh had gone in for surgery, you wouldn't have had the late Queen at his bedside. It's just not what that generation used to do. And indeed, there was a huge amount of secrecy around health matters. When King George VI had a lung removed, they brought doctors into Buckingham Palace to carry out the operation. We are in now more modern times. We've got a king who's talking about, who would have thought that the phrase enlarged prostate would have appeared in a Buckingham Palace missive 10, 20, 30 years ago? Clearly he said to William, You know, prioritise your wife and look after your wife because she's the most important person in your life. And I think we can all agree with that. However, they aren't a normal family. They're also a family firm. And therefore there is an impetus, there is an onus on William to step up. There had in the past been sort of whispers about whether William and Kate have been doing enough. You look at their number of engagements per year compared to the likes of Princess Anne, who, let's not forget, is 17th in the line of succession, so very much down the pecking order, and yet the busiest royal last year. I think she clocked up nearly 550 engagements, more even than the King. William and Kate are doing something very different. They're more interested in thematic royalty, so rather than sort of going to the proverbial opening of an envelope, they want to be talking about mental health in the round, or early years, or in William's case, the Earthshot Prize, which is kind of a big thing that doesn't involve lots of little visits. Having said that, the public wants lots of little visits because they want the opportunity to press the flesh with the royals. So there is a balancing act, and you do get then into the realm of asking whether William and Kate are pulling their weight at a time when the monarchy has already been slimmed down beyond the King's comprehension. As Princess Anne said in an interview last year, you know, he didn't intend for it to be this slimmed down. He didn't intend for the Duke and Duchess of Sussex to be off the scene, or indeed did he plan for the Duke of York to have to step back from public life. People do look at the royals and they say, yes, on one hand it is a family, but it is sometimes a slightly dysfunctional family. What did somebody once say? Maybe it was even me, you know, they're not so much a nuclear family as a thermonuclear one. In the sense that it does seem odd to people, doesn't it, that Prince Harry flies in from America and then only spends half an hour with his father, and then the King and the Queen then leave him at Clarence House and fly off to Sandringham and presumably don't take him with them. Why would that be? Well, I can't imagine that Harry's stepmother wants to spend that much time with him after he described her that she was wicked. I can't imagine that there's much love lost there at the moment. So the King's in a difficult position because he loves his son, and I think will always support his son because that's what parents do, yet he's got a wife who is not happy with his son, and he's also got a son who is not happy with his other son. And that's very complicated and difficult. This idea that because Harry was back in London, that suddenly Prince William would be leaving Kate's bedside to rush to his brother, even though his brother has trashed him in his book and on Netflix and in Oprah Winfrey, and by the way, along with Meghan, has thrown Kate under a bus. I mean, you know, so when people say they haven't really spoken, that is true. They haven't really spoken, they didn't really speak at the funeral, they haven't really spoken since. We do understand there was a very cordial conversation between the King and Prince Harry for the King's 75th birthday last November, but I don't think relations are particularly cordial between the royal brothers. But that's not to say that other people looking in at this situation aren't thinking to themselves, goodness me, if a cancer diagnosis of the only parent that you have left doesn't bring you together, what will? And I think it's perfectly fair to speculate on that. Appreciate that I wrote a piece sort of saying, well, the King needs William and William arguably needs Harry. Then I got a load of people trolling me online saying, oh, what are you talking about? William doesn't need Harry. I'm just speaking from the perspective of a sibling with two older brothers who, in times of crisis in our own family life, have needed each other. I'm just saying that, speaking as a human rather than a journalist, that actually if a parent has had a cancer diagnosis, it's probably better for that parent, regardless of what's been said and done, for those two brothers to come together. So we haven't witnessed a royal rapprochement, and we probably won't. But that's not to say that conversations might now need to start up transatlantically in discussion of the King's health and his treatment. But it may well be that William is just still so hurt by what Harry has done that he can't see past it. They're in a bit of a standoff because Harry's expecting an apology from William and William's expecting an apology from Harry, and neither are willing to give one. So you're in a bit of a sort of royal brotherly stalemate there, I think.